Ever feel like, productivity is this uphill battle? You're checking things off your list, but the joy is kind of missing, you know?
I know exactly what you mean.
Today, we're ditching the productivity hacks and looking at something way more interesting. The science of actually feeling good while getting things done.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is how positive emotions can actually change how our brains work when it comes to being productive. It's like we're talking real, tangible changes here, not just some vague good vibes thing.
Right. Our first source dives into this with a concept they call feel-good productivity, and they use as a classic psychology experiment as an example. It's called the candle problem.
Oh, yeah, the candle problem. It's a classic.
Yeah.
So they give you a candle, matches, and a box of thumbtacks, right? And the goal is to attach the candle to a wall so the wax doesn't drip on a table. Sounds easy enough, but
Most people get totally stuck
they do.
because they get hung up on how you'd usually use a box of thumbtacks instead of seeing the possibilities.
It's true. They get stuck on those usual uses. And what's interesting is this study found that the people who had a little mood booster before they literally gave them candy, were way better at solving the problem.
Mm.
Shows you how much positive emotions can help us, like broaden our thinking and all that, you know, and actually helps us see solutions we might miss otherwise.
It's not just about forcing a smile while you work. It's that feeling good actually helps us be more creative, right? It makes us better problem solvers.
And the research backs this up too. The source goes into this theory called broaden and build, which basically says positive emotions really do broaden our ability to think and act. Imagine it like this. Each time you experience joy, gratitude, or even just find something amusing, you're building these new pathways in your brain. These pathways let you think more broadly, more resourcefully, you know?
So it's like a mental workout.
Yeah, it's like a workout for your brain that helps you deal with challenges and bounce back from setbacks and come up with new ideas. Pretty cool, right?
Okay, I'm definitely hooked now. But what's actually happening in our brains when we feel good? This source mentions some really interesting stuff about hormones and all that.
Okay, so one of the key things is that your brain releases these feel-good hormones
Mm.
like dopamine, serotonin, you've probably heard of those, and endorphins. They all do different things, but basically they affect our mood, our motivation, even how much pain we feel.
Oh.
When we feel those positive emotions, our brains get the surge of these hormones, and that makes us feel happier. But not just happier, more energized, more focused too.
So it's like our brains are rewarding us for feeling good, which then makes us want to keep going.
Exactly, a positive feedback loop.
I like it.
And when we feel good, we have more energy, obviously, but also more motivation. We're more likely to get in that flow state that everyone's always talking about, you know, where work feels easy, maybe even enjoyable.
Yeah, totally. But, and this is a big but, life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, right? How does stress play into all of this? Because this source touched on that too.
Stress is a fascinating thing. A little bit of stress can actually be a good thing. It can give us the little push we need to get things done. But chronic stress, that's a whole other beast. It messes with our minds and our bodies.
Yeah, you can really feel it.
You can. And it definitely affects how productive we are. When we're stressed out all the time, our brains get stuck in this fight or flight mode.
Like our brain is stuck on high alert.
Right. Always on high alert. And when that happens, it's almost impossible to focus or think clearly or tap into those creative problem-solving skills we were talking about.
It's like our brains get hijacked by stress.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, hijacked by stress. Makes it so much harder to do our best work.
Definitely.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This source talks about what they call the undoing hypothesis.
Okay.
And this hypothesis basically says that positive emotions can actually act like an antidote to stress. Like, imagine hitting the reset button on your system.
I love that. So it's not hopeless. We're not just stuck with the stress. There are actually ways to deal with it using positive emotions. That's a relief. So we're not just stuck with the stress, huh? There are ways to actually counteract it with positive emotions. I like the sound of that. But how do we actually do that? I feel like there's this pressure to be happy all the time, and that just seems impossible.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't mean forcing happiness 24/7. That's just not realistic, you know, and it wouldn't really be genuine either.
Right.
This is more about figuring out ways to bring those positive emotions into our lives that actually work and that we can actually keep up, you know, even when things get tough, which is where our second source comes in. It's all about play.
Play. Okay, I'm intrigued. I actually love that.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels counterintuitive, right? Like when we think about work, we think, okay, got to be serious, get things done. Play is like The opposite.
You'd think so, right? But the research actually suggests that when we bring some play into our work, it can actually make us more creative, more productive even.
Okay, tell me more. I need to hear this.
Okay, so the source starts off with this story about Richard Feynman.
Who's that?
Oh, he's this famous physicist, really brilliant guy. And he was brilliant, obviously, but he'd get burnt out, frustrated with his work sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that.
And one day he was in the cafeteria feeling kind of stuck, and he saw a student messing around with a plate, just spinning it, watching how it moved.
Okay, that's relatable. Who hasn't gotten distracted by something like that?
Right, exactly. But here's the cool part. Instead of just being like, whatever, kid, get out of my face, Feynman was actually curious.
Interesting.
He was curious about it. So he starts playing with the plate himself, trying to figure out, like, the physics behind why it moves the way it does.
His brain just couldn't help itself. That's awesome.
Right. And it's like that little kid in him, that sense of wonder, it just took over. And guess what? That little detour, that playful exploration, it totally reignited his passion for his work and even led him to do some groundbreaking research that actually contributed to him winning a Nobel Prize.
Wow, get out of No way.
Yeah.
So you're saying that, like, we all have that ability to tap into that playful curiosity.
That's what the source is arguing, yeah.
Yeah.
And that if we do, it could really change everything.
Okay, I'm convinced. How do we do it? How do we actually bring more play into our lives? Especially at work. I need tips.
Well, the source talks about a couple of experiments. They're based on, real scientific research, and I think they're really interesting. One of them is this idea of figuring out your own play personality.
Ooh, play personality. I love this. So, like, what are these play personalities?
Okay, so the source talks about 8 different ones, and it's not like you're just one or the other, It's more about understanding what kinds of play really speak to us, what gives us energy. For example, there's the collector.
Okay, I think I know a few collectors.
Right. They love gathering information, organizing stuff. It could be objects, too, not just information. And then there's the competitor. They love a good challenge, pushing themselves. Always got to be the best.
Oh, yeah. Type A all the way.
Totally. And the explorer, they're all about new experiences, expanding their horizons, always wanting to learn new things. And then you have the creator. They love to, create, bringing something new into the world. Could be anything, music, art, even a delicious meal.
I'm definitely seeing myself in a few of those.
Yeah.
I think I might be a mix of the explorer and maybe the storyteller. I love learning new things, and then I love finding fun, creative ways to share what I've learned. What about you?
I think I'm definitely drawn to the collector. I love doing research, digging into a topic. I love that feeling of finding the right information and then, making sense of it all, organizing it, It's probably why I love doing this kind of work.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know what kind of play speaks to us. How do we actually use that knowledge to make work more, playful?
Yeah. It's about making a conscious effort to bring that energy, that thing that lights you up, into the work itself. Let's say you're a storyteller, right? You have to give a big presentation. Instead of just thinking, okay, gotta get through this, what if you thought of it like, how can I tell a really compelling story here?
I love that. Reframing. So it's about finding a way to make it exciting for yourself.
Exactly. Or let's say you're a creator and you're stuck with this spreadsheet you have to do. What if you thought of it as, okay, how can I make this not just a spreadsheet, but something really beautiful too, something that's visually appealing and informative?
Instead of, oh, I'm stuck with this spreadsheet.
Right, exactly. So it's really about remembering what we love, remembering our strengths and interests, and seeing if we can use those to make work, if not fun, then maybe less of a chore, more like play.
I love it. What other experiments does the source suggest?
Another one I really liked is this idea of looking for what the author calls side quests in our everyday lives.
Side quests.
Eh.
Like in video games.
Yes, exactly. I love that analogy. It's all about finding these little opportunities for adventure, little things we can do to break up the routine and inject a little novelty into our days.
I like it. Give me some examples.
It could be as simple as trying a new coffee shop on your way to work instead of going to the same one every day.
Okay, that's doable.
Right. Or what if you take a different route on your commute, just to shake things up a bit?
Ooh, see the neighborhood, maybe discover something new. I like it.
Or even just trying a different approach to a task you do all the time, just to see what happens.
Those are great. I can see how even small changes like that can make a big difference in how we experience our days, you know. But sometimes it's not just about finding the fun in things, right? It's also about dealing with those moments when work actually is stressful.
Oh, absolutely. And the source actually addresses that head on. One of the biggest things is learning how to lower the stakes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like if you're playing a game, it's way more fun if you're not putting so much pressure on yourself to win or lose.
Exactly. And this engineer, he's actually NASA trained.
Wait, NASA. Okay, now I'm really interested.
So he did this really interesting study where he wanted to see how people approached this, like, coding challenge.
NASA and coding. Okay, you've got to tell me more about this study. This sounds really interesting.
Okay, so he designs this experiment, right? And he splits people up into two groups. They both get the same coding puzzles, but here's the thing. When someone in one group makes a mistake, they get, the typical error message pops up on the screen, something like, "You have failed, please try again." But the other group,
What did they get?
theirs, said, "You have failed, you've lost 5 points, you now have 195 points. Please try again."
Oh, wow. Okay, so even though the points were totally meaningless, it's like one group was actually being penalized for making a mistake. I bet that changes how you approach the whole thing.
It totally did. The group that kept getting penalized, even though the points didn't mean anything, they gave up way sooner and they weren't as successful. The other group, the ones that didn't have those penalties, they kept going, they experimented more, and they were more likely to actually solve the puzzle.
That's wild. It really shows you how much even just the idea of failure can hold us back, you know?
For sure.
Like if we can just change our mindset to see those failures as just part of the process, just information, data points, not the end of the world, then we can let go of some of that pressure and really let ourselves be more playful and experimental with our work.
Exactly. It's all about cultivating that growth mindset, right? Where we're always learning and growing. It's not about being perfect because that's just not realistic. And, that actually leads us to another really important insight from this source.
Oh, tell me.
This idea of approaching our work with sincerity instead of getting too serious about it.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's like there's a difference between, being fully committed to your work, being present, doing your best, and letting it turn into this big, heavy, stressful thing.
Right, and the source actually quotes this philosopher, and he says, "Don't be serious, be sincere." I love that quote because it really gets at that difference. It's about caring about what we do, putting in the effort, but also finding a way to, like, enjoy the process.
Totally. It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot where we're engaged with our work, but we're not letting it take over our lives and suck all the fun out of everything.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just about, like, paying attention to how we talk to ourselves about our work instead of, "Ugh, I have to finish this report." What if
Okay.
it was, "Okay, let's dive into this and see what I can create."
It seems so simple, right?
Yeah,
But I bet just changing the words we use can make a difference.
it really can. Because it's about approaching our work from a place of curiosity, and even playfulness instead of this place of obligation and dread.
And that is what this whole deep dive has been all about, figuring out how to bring more joy and ease into our work lives. And it's not about like some magic formula that's going to fix everything overnight, right? It's about being mindful, trying things out, and seeing what happens.
I think that's a really important point. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay.
It's a journey. And like we were talking about before, we get to choose how we approach that journey, right?
Exactly.
Maybe we decide to try adding those little side quests to our day, or we think about our play personality and how we can tap into that. Or maybe we just work on shifting our perspective on those challenges we all face.
Absolutely. And the exciting thing is we can all take this journey. No matter where we are in our lives or what we do, we can all explore these ideas and see what works for us.
I love that. We have the power to shape our experiences, even when we're super busy, even when work is demanding. We just have to be willing to embrace a little playfulness, a little curiosity.
And imagine what we might discover along the way. About ourselves, about our work, I think it could be amazing.
That's the best part. You never know. So as we wrap up our deep dive on feel-good productivity, we'll leave you with this. What's one thing you've been putting off? Something for work, maybe a creative project, or just, that to-do list that keeps growing. How could you approach it in a more playful way, a more adventurous way? What if you set an intention to actually enjoy the process, to let go of the pressure a bit, and just be sincerely engaged?
What if you got to lose? Give it a try. You might be surprised at what you can accomplish when you approach your work with a little more joy, a little more purpose.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And until next time, remember to be kind to yourselves, stay curious, and most importantly, don't forget to have some fun.